So I'm sure you're familiar by now, but employees in all kinds of companies in all kinds of sectors across America are currently being fired for making mostly online comments that either mock or celebrate or cheer or outright endorse the murder of Charlie Kirk. Except this trend is not stopping anytime soon because, as it turns out, the violent and insane leftists show no signs of stopping to be violent or insane anytime soon. As a matter of fact, what we saw over the weekend is that the mass firings are expanding in all kinds of directions. Take a listen.
The fallout from Charlie Kirk's killing has spread to the workplace. People are getting fired for comments that seem to celebrate or glorify the assassination of the MAGA activist and father of two young children. These companies and organizations have reported either terminating or suspending employees for posts about Kirk, and that includes Middle Tennessee State University firing a worker they say had, quote, zero empathy for Kirk's death. Conservative activists, Republican lawmakers, and even a doxing website are flagging the comments in what critics say is a campaign to punish those posters. Let's bring in Jessica Kriegel, the Chief Strategy Officer of Culture Partners. Jessica, thanks so much for being here with us. Look, there is, of course, the First Amendment and freedom to speech in this country, but there's also private companies who hire people, and it would seem to me if it's a private company, they get to decide who they want to hire and fire. What do you think?
Absolutely. They don't need a reason to fire you if you're an at-will employee, which most workers in the U.S. are at-will contracts. So they can fire you because you wore green instead of blue one day. It doesn't matter. Really, what the leader's job at these private employers is to identify the workers who are aligned with the culture that they're trying to cultivate, the strategy that they have to achieve their results towards their purpose. So with American Airlines, for example, they said that the person was suspended because it didn't align with their purpose, which is to care for people on life's journeys. That's a perfectly legitimate and actually best practice for how you make decisions around hiring and firing.
And we've already been covering this trend, but we do have more updates to bring you today, not just out of firings at major American corporations, but even arrests being made for public cases of vandalism and violence. As it turns out, I think the overall trend you're seeing right now is these naive or coddled, or in many cases just mentally deranged leftists are starting to realize that in the real world, there are actual consequences for their actions, and they're essentially crying victim and acting super surprised that that is indeed the case. And we'll tell you all about it. So guys, if you do us a favor, if you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate your support on this channel. And let's get into it. I got some updates to bring you out of Home Depot, the US military, many other sources. But first and foremost, I do want to point out what you're probably thinking, which is that it's a little bit shocking, actually, to hear such a level-headed and rational take from CNN. But after all, this should be basic common sense in a normal human society, which is to say that, number one, yes, companies do have the ability and the right to fire you if you do not align with their culture or their mission. But secondly, let's not pretend like this is just any reason they're doing this. No, it's not about not showing up in uniform one day or maybe having an idea that the boss disagrees with. This is about the fact that you have people working in businesses that outright glorify violence. They endorse and celebrate the idea of murder. And as, for instance, American Airlines is saying, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to have those types of actual violent and hateful individuals, not just like, oh, the left wing says it's violent and hateful because it disagrees with some political policy of theirs. No, like literally endorsing hate-filled violence. Maybe that's not something we want to have flying in our skies or educating our children or operating on you in the context of healthcare or like quite literally anything else, number one. Secondly, though, the other point I'd like to make about this is that you notice a pattern here, which is that there is almost no pattern, right? As I said the day that it happened, this is not just a small amount of unemployed losers tweeting this stuff from their basement in Portland, Oregon, or even is this exclusively limited to traditionally liberal professions like education or, working at MSNBC or nonprofit charity work or something like that. Look at the examples. Yes, many school districts, many universities have had to let go of teachers. That's to be expected in a sense because we know how rampant the rot is in education. But look at it. Airline companies, the Carolina Panthers, Freddie USA, as we'll show you in a second, Office Depot. The point overall that I've been trying to make to people is to understand, is this the majority of Americans? No. But according to polls, about 50% of left-wingers, of liberal voters in America, do support assassination culture. They say that this type of stuff is at least somewhat justified, which is to point out, we're not talking about a fringe minority recluded to maybe one area of the country. These people live in all 50 states. In many cases, they're probably your neighbors, they're your coworkers, and I don't say that to fearmonger or scare anyone or try to endorse any crazy ideas to do about that. I'm just pointing out that indeed, this is something that is going to be essentially a mass firing for that very reason, and it should really make us rethink maybe how we view maybe the idea of like unity in America when after all, it is this rampant and it is this widespread. That said, I do also want to address the elephant in the room because I know it's coming. You have heard a lot of leftists and even some contrarian people on the right wing try to say that, oh, this is cancel culture. Hey, right wingers, I thought you were against cancel culture. Why are you so hypocritical? And I'm sure many of you have heard this as well, which is why I want to clearly and plainly state that there is no moral equivalence whatsoever, right? There's a big difference, as I wrote in this tweet, between firing someone for not respecting Zism pronouns or voting for Donald Trump or not supporting a political movement like BLM or something like that versus simply firing someone because of the fact that they celebrate and cheer and endorse cold-blooded murder of an innocent father in front of his children. These are not the same. There's a difference between disagreeing on issues of political policy or culture, any of those things, versus outright endorsing cold-blooded murder, okay? And by the way, I'd also further like to point out that if the context here was not about Charlie Kirk, or anything political, and we're just talking about the issue of violence and murder, no one would bat an eye or remotely blame a corporation for saying that, hey, people like this shouldn't be working for us, right? Clearly, violently intended, mentally and socially ill people maybe are not actually even just safe people overall to have in the workplace. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine for a moment, let's remove Charlie Kirk from this because I understand it's cold-blooded murder, but you want to say, oh, it's a political figure. Okay, so what if it was a non-political figure? How would any American think a company should react if you saw someone just cheering the random murder of people working at the company? It would probably be a completely reasonable and acceptable response to say, hey, this person has a lot of issues. Not only is it a bad look for our company, not only clearly does this person not align with the values of the company, but thirdly, there's a strong argument to be made. They're an active safety threat to the workplace. After all, if someone is displaying violent tendencies, who's to say they're not just going to go out and commit violence, right? So as I wrote right here in this tweet, what is quote unquote left-wing cancel culture? You should be fired for not using the pronouns or some stupid petty disagreement. Meanwhile, right-wing quote-unquote cancel culture, or if you want to call it consequence culture or whatever it is simply saying don't endorse cold-blooded murder. So guys, let's make that very clear. This is not a both sides issue. This is not about hypocrisy. The two situations are not remotely the same, and I don't want to hear any of that garbage. I don't want to hear conservatives say, hey, it's a slippery slope because if you get rid of people for celebrating the murder and death of people like us, maybe the left wing might go back to firing you for not supporting the Democrat Party. It's ridiculous. First of all, they've already rolled down the slippery slope. And secondly, again, they're not the same freaking issue. Okay, so let's just get rid of this idiotic mentality. Now, that said, I do want to bring you some of my favorite examples from this we saw over the weekend, and perhaps the very best one right here was out of Office Depot. Well, not only were these employees in their private life saying crazy things, actually publicly, while they were at work, refused to print out a tribute poster that was supposed to be used at a Charlie Kirk Memorial, stating why, because it was quote unquote political propaganda to honor someone who just died by having a memorial for him. Political propaganda. Check out this video, and then in a second, we'll show you what happened.
Thank you. So, thank you. So, we came in for an order earlier to print a poster for a vigil tonight.
Yeah, so
for somebody that passed. It's not
it's propaganda. I'm sorry, we don't put that here.
Alrighty. So, what's your name?
Carol, I'm print supervisor.
I'm one of the managers.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, we do
So
not
they
print-
say they don't print
we don't
political
print
propaganda. So this is somebody that passed away a couple years
That's
ago.
political propaganda, unfortunately. I'm
So
sorry.
this is for a prayer tonight, for a prayer vigil?
It's still propaganda, unfortunately.
I printed
What makes it propaganda?
Because he's a political figure, and I don't have to. Yeah.
Our general manager is going to be in on Monday. If you
No,
want to
it's
speak
totally
further
okay.
on
No,
the
we have-
subject,
we have
if you would
lots-
like
we
to,
have
you're welcome
orders.
to return.
Yeah, so just to be clear, you can see right here, they already paid for the poster. The poster was not political. It's about honoring a guy who just passed away at a prayer vigil, and the response was, it's political propaganda. Now, needless to say, this is not actually consistent with the company policy of Office Depot, which is another thing I like to further note. You know, number one, these companies do have rules. Secondly, even outside of that, there are usually kind of standard practices and general policies when it comes to conducting yourself even outside of the workplace in terms of things like social media. Just to make it clear to the cancel culture crowd, these are perfectly reasonable and legitimate reasons to be dismissing people from their work. But take a listen here to what Office Depot has since said. And yes, newsflash, these so-called managers who are clearly doing a great job of managing this business that they are completely ruining are indeed fired. So here is the statement from Office Depot and Office Max, quote, "We are deeply concerned by the incident that occurred at store 3382 in Portage, Michigan. The behavior displayed by our associate is completely unacceptable and insensitive, violates our company policies, again, and does not reflect the values we uphold at Office Depot." Why do I keep bringing up this point about company policies? Because the argument that left-wingers are making right now, that people like this should keep their jobs, surrounds around the fact that, oh, you should be allowed both at work and off of work to violate your own company's policies. And if you fire them for doing that, that's cancel culture, you know? I don't know. Apparently, if I show up to a office on Monday that, you know, let's say I had a job like that, right? I show up, I just take a dump on the office desk. Or if they fire me for that, I'm like, it's cancel culture. It's cancel culture. No, there are things within the reasonable bounds that you have to do at work, and one of them is to actually follow the rules of your own freaking workplace, you know? It's the same situation as, for instance, federal workers, because they work on taxpayer dollars, are not allowed to express or endorse or engage in political causes while they're on the taxpayer salary, right? While they're clocked in at work. So if they get fired because they wore a political statement to work, is that cancel culture? Or is that, oh, you didn't follow the freaking rules of the workplace? It's really simple, right? But anyways, going on here to say we sincerely apologize to the customer affected and to our community for this regrettable situation. Upon learning of the incident, we immediately reached out to the customer to address their concerns and seek to fulfill their order to satisfaction, although apparently that was not needed because, as you could hear from that video, the vigil was supposed to be that very same night, and apparently a FedEx office stepped in there and printed them for free. So I'm not sure which FedEx that is, but I'd like to give a huge shout out to that business. We also launched an immediate internal review, and as a result, the associate is no longer involved, aka fired from the organization, as they should be. We are committed to reinforcing training with all team members to ensure our standards of respect, integrity, and customer service are upheld at every location. Our customers and communities deserve nothing less. Again, to these people, guys, what did you expect to happen? By the way, we're also seeing stories because I brought up before, again, every type of job, every type of sector, there are many cases even within the US military. A place that you generally assume that right-wingers are working in, not all of them as it turns out, are likewise being released from duty, being fired from jobs at places like the Department of Defense, or also, as we covered actually in our first video on this subject, doing the same exact thing, cheering the murder, mocking it, being prideful or having a good attitude towards it. And so take a listen here to even more of those details, where apparently recently a U.S. Marine, among many others, have been let go by Pete Hegseth and the DOD for, again, posts and words that obviously violate the rules of the DOD. Take a listen.
I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us. Well, there is more fallout right now from social media posts that were put after Charlie Kirk's death. We've been seeing it really across not only the public jobs, but also some private sector jobs as well, but also in our military. I want to bring you this information that a Marine was fired for his social media post after Charlie Kirk's death. The result of the Pentagon's campaign to reprimand troops for inappropriate posts about Charlie Kirk's killing has been swift. Captain Austin Gallegos, a spokesperson for the Western Recruiting Region, confirmed a Marine officer whose post became part of the campaign on social media has been relieved of his duties as a recruiter and is now being investigated. Another military official who spoke on conditions to candidly discuss ongoing investigations confirmed that their service branch had also initiated several investigations of service members and their social media posts following online reports. Also want to show you what Sean Parnell put out, saying it is unacceptable for military personnel and Department of War civilians to celebrate or mock the assassination of a fellow American. The Department of War has zero tolerance for it. Pete Hegseth also saying, we are tracking all these very closely and will address immediately. Completely unacceptable.
Yeah, well, again, what a very obviously common sense statement. It is unacceptable for personnel and military to be celebrating or mocking the assassination of the civilians of this country. By the way, for the crowd of people who are so obsessed with war crimes, I mean, if that's how they view American civilians, how do you think they would treat other civilians? Do you think these are stable or normal people that, again, common sense says should be working in the military to begin with? It's not a complicated subject, and neither is the subject of, hey, if you vandalize things, you're going to be arrested. Because you've seen many of these cases as well, right? F around and find out. The common theme of this video, okay? Do very stupid things. You're going to get stupid consequences for those actions. And perhaps there's no greater example here than the man who was just arrested today for vandalizing the Charlie Kirk Memorial outside of Turning Point USA's headquarters in Arizona. And this video just speaks for itself, right? Boom, destroy everything, vandalize things, take things from other people. 30 seconds later, he's in handcuffs. Big surprise, I know. All right, so there you can see he was vandalizing this, kicking balloons, kicking the flowers, stuff like that. Some guy steps in, and then about 5 seconds later, here come the police. Arresting the guy for breaking the law. I know that is so insane to think about. Hey, left-wingers, is this cancel culture? Huh? Arresting people for vandalism after they commit vandalism? You hypocritical right-wingers, how dare you enforce basic laws and social norms? This is very evil. This is literally the fascism, guys, okay? This is Trump's secret police rounding people up. They're kidnapping people. They're kidnapping them. I'd also like to note, by the way, as you'll see in this video, see that shirt? He is wearing either the same or very similar shirt to that which was worn by the Charlie Kirk assassin. Just to show you how deranged he is, what he's trying to display to the world. Yes, he fully supports the assassin. There's a reason he's wearing that. And he wants to actually stand in solidarity, not with the murdered, but the murderer, okay? And this is far from the first instance you've seen of this. I mean, there was a case in Idaho, I think another one today at Texas Tech. A lot of leftists has shown up to Charlie Kirk memorials or vigils or similar such events. And in some cases, they just scream F you. In other cases, they do things like this, which is try to vandalize things or assault people, or in other ways, just disrespect the guy in his death. And, it's disrespectful, obviously. It's crude, many things, but I want people to truly comprehend by doing a very similar example, as I brought up on the argument of cancel culture, as to what these people are really doing when you break it down, which is essentially, let me take this example, right? So imagine if some guy died who you didn't like. Okay, let's say it's someone maybe you went to school with, a neighbor, you guys never got along, you fought a lot, but ultimately he's dead. Now, it's one thing not to go to the funeral. It would be another thing to show up to the funeral saying, F you, screaming, trying to interrupt, trying to shut down the funeral, right? F you, F all of you people who are mourning this guy, and maybe even try to start fights with the funeral attendees. Like, that is in order to do something like that, right? You're not just like a bad person. There's a very deep-seated level of evil, of derangement, etc., right? Again, required to show up essentially on someone's grave and make that kind of scene and mock a man in his death, even if you didn't like the guy. But that is exactly what countless leftists right now are doing across the country at these Charlie Kirk memorials and vigils, right? They're not just protesting over some political thing. Again, they're mocking a guy in his death. And I don't know exactly what kind of crazy thing you got to have inside to be driven to do that, right? Because I don't care who it is, right? Even if George Soros died, I would have no nature in me compelling me to show up to his funeral essentially and try to like disrupt it and cause a bunch of problems and say, I hate George Soros. I hate him alive. I hate him. He's dead. Screw all you guys for being here. Like, again, and that's a guy I deeply oppose and am not a fan of whatsoever. It's just not something you do. It's not something you would even think to do, right? But again, we're dealing here with very evil and sick people, whether it's those celebrating the murder or whether it's those, of course, doing things like this. And that's what I want everyone to keep in mind. But nonetheless, guys, there you have it. Glad here again to see the consequences being served for playing stupid games and winning stupid prizes. I know it's a hard concept to understand. Some people are going to call it hypocritical cancel culture. It's not. It's really not. So let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.